a phone call from one of my ministers this morning, actually a text message, that was demonstrating the burn marks, the vandalism, and the destroyed trash bins that were outside of my building. We had not received a phone call, did not receive any communication from anyone, police department, fire department. He just drove up and saw this damage to our property, and the neighbor walked over and followed him right into the parking lot and told him what happened, and we ended up. He ended up calling the fire department, and they did confirm that they were there around 12:30 a.m. To put out a fire that had been set in the rear of our building.
Upon learning this information, what were your first thoughts? Why do you think your building was targeted in this way? Why do you think somebody set a fire there?
Well, we've been at this building since 1980. So we've been here for 40 years, never had an incident like this before. We've been in Berkeley, my family, pastoring churches and doing ministry since 1972. Never had anything happen like this before. We put up a Black Lives Matter sign on the front of our church building because none of us are there. We are all sheltering in place, obviously, but we wanted a bold message to continue to be proclaimed from the house of God in Berkeley. And later on that night, somebody attempted to burn our building down. So is it a coincidence? I don't know. But I do know this: Black Lives Matter, the house of God still stands, and we are not deterred. I'll wait to find out from the authorities who the suspects may or may not be. But either way, it was an act of terror, and we are not terrorized. We are indeed standing tall and strong. We are now in a long list of Black churches committed to justice that have been burnt and or attempted to be burnt down because of our commitment. And so we now join a righteous cloud of witnesses that will continue to bear the truth.
And this question can go to either of you. What would you like the community to know? I'll save this question. First, I'll ask you, when you found out what happened, how did it make you feel?
I was angry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I was angry, but I also felt violated, I was irritated that I hadn't heard from any of the leaders of my city who call me generously when there's an emergency on their end. Hadn't heard from the police chief, who I still believe needs to be fired or resign. Haven't heard from the mayor until later on a Facebook post. I hadn't heard from the city manager yet. Hadn't heard from anyone from the fire. So obviously in Berkeley, a Black church burning is not an event that requires some special attention, particularly when the church that is burning is connected to a group of, revolutionaries who are attempting to dismantle white supremacy. What do you say, Ben?
Well, I think it also can't be lost around the cumulative effect of trauma that this has on Black communities and Black worshipers and Black people of faith and justice. But when I received the message from Pastor Mike that our childhood church that we were raised in, that we had many of our fondest memories in and had our spiritual development in, had been terrorized in this way, it certainly impacted me. But since the messages have gone forward, my phone, I know, just like Pastor Mike's phone, has been ringing off the hook from other adults who were children raised in this building who are experiencing another anti-Black act of racist terror against them and their community in a way that continues to cause Black people to not feel safe here in the Bay Area. And I think it is a real critique around the so-called progressive Bay Area that we have, that this same kind of violence that showed up in rural Jim Crow South is potentially rearing its ugly head here in 2020 in the Bay Area.
I know you both have expressed this already, but I'm going to ask, why do you feel like the church was targeted?
Well, I feel like the church is targeted because people know that the Black church, for good or for bad, is still a bastion and an outpost for justice. My leadership at the Way Church has been very public in the city of Berkeley, in the city of Oakland, and in the Bay Area. We do not believe white supremacists, racists, the Proud Boys, Ku Klux Klan members, neo-Nazis have any place in the Bay Area. They should not be in police departments. They should not be in any space of authority where they can wield any influence over people's lives. And so we are uncompromising about that. And if somebody got upset about it, then hey, you know, they didn't like John Lewis either, and they didn't like C.T. Vivian either. And we've just celebrated their life as we laid them to rest. It goes to show that people seem to love dead heroes and revolutionaries, and seem to be bothered by people who are alive speaking the truth in love, but still in truth.
You told me in the history of you having this church, you guys have never seen anything like this. You guys firmly believe it was because of that sign. Did the sign go up that same day? You know, kind of what led you to, you know, believe that it was because of the sign you guys were targeted?
Well, I mean, you know, it's not just a sign. You know, our church is a church where we hold regular protests. We just did a protest several weeks ago related to the incendiary remarks of the Berkeley police chief, who claimed that without tear gas, all he would have left is to shoot protesters with live round ammunition. We held and have held forums there talking about defunding the police. We have held forums there talking about ending Urban Shield. We have held forums there talking about how to end gun violence between community members. So we are not shying away from any form of violence as it manifests in our community. We are peacemakers. The scripture says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. We are the children of God. We just in a long lineage now of people who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. It is not lost upon me that we have very sick and maladjusted individuals who are carrying all kinds of bad intentions in their body, in their mind, and in their spirit. And so whoever did this sick deed, I hope that they get help and healing. And I hope that if indeed they had ill intent, then justice will be served. But either way, we're going to continue to speak out. We still believe that the police need to cleanse its ranks of racists and white supremacists. We believe we need to shrink the footprint of policing in this country and Black and brown communities. We believe that we need to stop the proliferation of weapons into our communities, and we need to ensure that we have resources to ensure we have public safety. All of these things are still true. We need to defeat Donald Trump, the white supremacist in chief. We need to make sure all of his sycophants from the Justice Department all the way down to the dog catcher are swept out of office in November. So we got a lot of work to do. This is an unfortunate event. It's upsetting. It's certainly, triggering, but we are a people that come from good stock. And so as the Kendrick Lamar prophet says, we gonna be all right.
Right. And I think it's important for folks to all recognize that we draw these connections to this kind of violence. Well, not even violence, but the destruction of the building and the intentions of threatening people around the notions of race, because there is a pattern of such activities here in the Bay Area. And so I think it's important for people of goodwill and people of values across the Bay Area to not have on rose-colored lenses, to believe that somehow because we live in the Bay Area, that racism is not a powerful force that threatens the lives of Black people, of Indigenous people, and of immigrants and Muslims and other religious minorities and our queer relatives and other targeted groups. It's important for all of us to recognize that the same sickness that we see across the country also exists here in the Bay Area, and we must be as vigilant as we are in our critique when we see it afar. We must be as vigilant of confronting it right here in our home base.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, is there anything that maybe I neglected to ask you? I know we reached out to the police department. They gave us some information.
What did they give you? Because we've not received any.
Oh, okay, wow. So, okay, it says on July 29th at 12:43 a.m., emergency personnel, police and fire responded to 1305 University Avenue on a report of a fire. When officers arrived, they learned that an unknown suspect set a plastic trash bin on fire in the rear parking lot of 1305 University Avenue. According to the reporting party, the suspect was seen standing over the fire and then walking away eastbound on University Avenue. Suspect was described as an unknown race, age person, possibly male, well, wearing a tan poncho jacket with reflective material. Officers searched the area for the suspect, but did not find the suspect. If anyone has any information about this arson, please call BPD's Property Crimes Unit. So, you guys, did they take a police report with you guys?
I've not spoken to anyone. We had no messages.
Wow.
We had a card, an incident card that was slid under the front of our door that we found
Okay.
halfway through the day. But I find that report to be problematic in a number of ways. It shows that these officers and the Berkeley Police Department do not make the connection between the burning of a Black church in a white supremacist kind of, moment to be worthy of further aggressive investigation. It shows that they did not feel the need to contact me as the pastor, who is a national civil rights leader, to let me know that this had happened to a prominent church in their city. It lets me know that even the way they describe the building, they don't call it a church. It's as if it's just a random property in the city that was just happened to have a trash bin set on fire in the rear. So, this kind of minimal police service that's given to the Black community is why we believe we need to defund the police, because there obviously is a disconnect between how you treat people who are experiencing terror in real time, and so I'm appreciative that they continue to prove our point. Every time they show up to offer police services, they prove our point. We need a 21st century policing, 21st century public safety apparatus that does not depend on these kinds of minimalist expressions of public safety.
Pastor and Reverend, I'll ask you both, maybe leave me with a lasting thought, and then just for a timeline reference for me, and you can tell me this either before or after you give me your last thought. When did the sign, so obviously you guys have been very active in the community, your stance in terms of what you guys believe is widely known. But in terms of the BLM sign, when did that go up? And then when did the arson happen? Just so I can know kind of the time. Oh, and then when did you find out about it? And you guys can wait till after you give me your lasting thoughts, or,
Black Lives Matter sign was put up on our building on yesterday afternoon. And the fire happened, as you just read, at 12:30ish of that same day, or that following early morning. So the Black Lives Matter sign was put up in the afternoon. The church arson happened later that late evening.
All right. So Reverend and Pastor, just leave me with thoughts you want to share with the community. What would you like to have happen? And, maybe just anything you want to leave, because I think you guys have both eloquently expressed what this means. You guys have touched on the historical significance, and kind of what you would like to see happen next, but leave me with some thoughts.
Sure. We believe Black Lives Matter. To us, it is more than a sign. To us, it is more than a slogan. We believe that Black lives, Black people, Black women, Black queer relatives, Black elderly people, Black religious people, that they all matter and that their lives deserve to be protected. And we think it is insidious that that sign would go up and that this kind of response would be found in the community. And for the police to respond and say that a building is burning, they would not have said the same thing if a fire was set to a synagogue. They would not have said the same thing if a fire was set in an affluent part of the neighborhood. The level of disrespect and the lack, the way in which Black lives are devalued in the city of Berkeley and in too many cities across this country is the reason that we are raising our voices. And so we're calling on the city to not just investigate this as a random arson, but to investigate it as a hate crime, where then when we can find the perpetrators, we can seek a restorative justice outcome, because we also don't believe in continuing the system of mass incarceration in this country. But we believe that the city needs to begin to take the impacts that happen to Black people seriously and to stop passing it off as if Black lives do not matter.
Pastor?
Yes, I will echo everything my brother said. I want to continue to assert that Black Lives Matter is the baseline of this conversation. Black lives are created in the image of the Most High God. Not only do we matter, we are God's creation. We have inherent dignity and rights that we do not apologize for. And if people are upset because Black folk and other marginalized folks are reaching for our God-given dignity and rights, then the struggle. This is the struggle, and we are not going anywhere. And so we're here to stay. And so we will persist. We will continue to move forward. But it is very, very troubling that the same week we have buried John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, that in arguably one of the most self-proclaimed progressive liberal cities in the country, a Black church was attempted to be burned to the ground. It lets us know that sometimes it appears being progressive is not good enough for Black people.
Pastor and Reverend, thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with me. And again, so sorry you guys have had to experience this.
Thank you.